tonight. Time to let it rip. On the panel right now, our resident expert on constitutional law and national security, retired Brigadier General, attorney, and Cooley Law School professor Michael McDaniel is back. So is another man who wears many hats, a classic rock and roller by day on WOMC, a gray-haired conservative at night. Jimmy J.J. Johnson is ready to rip. Also with us is a woman who started her career as a public school teacher and ended up as a leader in Lansing. The Democrat from Detroit, State Rep Sherry Gay Denyogo is here. Along with Tori Sachs, wife, mother, Republican, now executive director of Michigan Rising Action, a conservative research group, and as always, anchor attorney Charlie Langton. Let's go right to the professor right here. We have this memo summarizing what was said in the phone call between President Trump and the Ukrainian president. This is not a verbatim text, but the president tonight says he did nothing wrong. How do you see it?
When you say, did he do something wrong, the question, I think, in everybody's mind is whether or not this is a crime. I would submit to you it does not need to be a crime. Certainly in impeachment, it says bribery, treason, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. Other high crimes and misdemeanors, Shul, was taken right out of the English code. They had that same phrase, and when you look back where they did impeachments, it didn't have to be a crime. It had to be an offense against the government, but it did not have to be codified as a crime. Similarly, if you look at Andrew Johnson, same thing. They went after him for things that were not a crime either. They were things like removing Edwin Stanton as Secretary of War and putting in somebody else. And that was like 2 or 3 of the articles. So let's not get wrapped around the ankle just yet about whether or not it's a crime. We don't have to. The question is there enough evidence to go forward with an impeachment inquiry? And I would suggest when you go on and the Ukrainian president says, hey, where's that the money you promised me so I can buy some military aid? I need a favor from you first.
He didn't say that.
We can all read the transcript. He says, well, we need a favor. I need you to do us a favor. How's that, JJ?
All right.
And that, I think, is at the point in which we need to look at whether or not this is corrupt behavior, whether or not he is using presidential power for personal gain. If that's the case, then you can talk about crafting articles of impeachment. But if we take this at one step at a time, there doesn't have to be a quid pro quo. That's immaterial. That would be great, because then it's bribery. He's giving something, he's withholding something in exchange for something personal.
Just like
so
Biden.
If it's bribery, then you go forward. But we can still investigate and should.
Well, you've just convicted Joe Biden of exactly that.
No,
he withheld $1.8 million.
You missed the part, JJ, where I said personal gain. He is doing it for personal gain.
His son's making $50,000 a month from the company that was being investigated. He killed the investigation by having an investigator fired, and they gave him 6 hours to do it.
The prosecutor was corrupt, and everybody knew the prosecutor was corrupt. And they said it had nothing to do with the Biden.
And we're going to go into that in the second segment, because we're going to have that bite with Biden from 2015. Meanwhile, Jimmy, the Democrats are comparing Trump to Vito Corleone from The Godfather.
I've heard it all day long.
Vito didn't threaten or cajole his enemies or friends, but he simply wanted them to do a favor. Do a favor for me. I've got this money for you.
I could hear the violin music all day long. It was the bumper sticker of the day. If you flip channels, every single Democratic talking head said exactly the same thing. I don't know. They must be on some group email or something.
They'll watch The Godfather
with their talking points every day. Listen, this is, it would be amusing if it wasn't such a tragedy for our country. We are not getting anything done.
I certainly agree with you there, JJ.
We are not getting anything done. We are on this continuous witch hunt. They started articles of impeachment the day he came down the elevator in Trump Tower, and it hasn't stopped. They had a rigged election that they still didn't win. They had a rigged investigation into the election that they lost at. Now they're going to try it again. And it's not going to work. As a matter of fact, I think the whistleblower is Donald Trump. He threw this red meat at him. They're going after it, and it's going to come back like a boomerang and take him out.
Well, Sherry, even today, you had the Ukrainian president sitting down with Donald Trump, and the Ukrainian president, Vladimir Zelensky, said, look, I was not pushed. No pressure. So in the words of Lindsey Graham, do you really want to impeach the president over a phone call?
So, transcripts, we're constantly dealing with redacting and taking away information. So now this is a summary. We don't have the full extent of what was said. But anytime that you're making an inference, I as a lawmaker cannot get on the telephone and talk to someone about potential legislation and then start talking about, well, I need a favor. I mean, so what does that call? Are we not having a problem with ethics? Does the president get a pass?
Well, the question, but isn't that politics? When you negotiate with Republicans in Lansing, don't you both get in a room and you say, well, I'll give you this if you give me that? What's the difference between politics and
when we're talking about legislation and making compromise around legislation and or the budget, we talk about compromising that way with another legislator. But when you're talking to someone in the community that you could possibly have a business initiative with, you're not making deals and saying, okay, well, I will vote this way for legislation, or I will support an appropriation in this manner if you do me a favor. That's illegal. So if it's illegal for legislators, it's illegal for the president. And really, that's what his conversation inferred, that he was asking for a favor.
Meanwhile, Tori, you run a group called Michigan Rising Action that researches candidates across the state of Michigan to make sure that you are tracking everything they say, everything they do, to fact check them. But in light of this situation in which we find ourselves today, would you think it is logical and legal to go outside of the country, to Canada, Mexico, France, to Ukraine, to get the information you would need to win an election in Michigan?
Just a few weeks ago, Bernie, who is back in town today, but he was here a few weeks ago, and he got on a bus and he went to Canada, and you bet we'll track him there. Right? Because if Bernie's going to get on a bus and go campaign in Canada, then we're going to follow because we want to know what he's saying.
Would you partner with Canadian groups over there to make sure that he's tracked?
We sent our people, but I think the point here, and you talked about campaigns too, I think a lot of Democrats ran in 2018 on health care, and we've seen Russia, Mueller. We've seen we're going to have a recession. None of those things happened. And now all of a sudden we're talking about Ukraine. Look, this is a great geography lesson for our kids. I hope they're all paying attention. But we're not talking about real things like passing the USMCA. We're not talking about lowering prescription drug prices. And I think if Democrats are going to run on those issues, they should run their campaign ads on impeachment then. They spend millions and millions of dollars on drug prices, on health care, and all we've gotten is impeachment for 3 years.
We also see in the transcript, though, Charlie, the mention of Attorney General William Barr and also Trump's private attorney, Rudolph Giuliani, who actually goes to the Ukraine. He said on one CNN interview he didn't say anything to Vladimir Zelensky about that. Then he said minutes later, yes, I did. His private attorney involved in affairs of state, is that legal?
No, I don't know if it's legal or not, but it's weird. It's just weird. Why do you need a private attorney to go out and represent an interest of the government? It does seem in the telephone conversation that the president was appointing Rudy Giuliani to go over there. Now, he holds no office. He's not appointed to anything. And yet, what would he have a purpose to go over there for other than for politics, for political purposes? And that bothers me, that we're using the lawyer. And when you say, well, I'm paying my lawyer, it's like, oh, big deal. That rises it to a level that I just don't like. I don't know if it's illegal. I understand this was vetted out by the current Justice Department, and the Justice Department in this conversation said no crime. Now, our impeachment issue, that's a political issue, and we'll talk about that later. But I don't like personal lawyers doing political things for a sitting president.
But historically, how is Donald Trump different from any other president, from Eisenhower to Kennedy to Nixon to Obama? Using his presidential powers to get foreign leaders and sometimes domestic leaders to bend to his will, to what he wants them to do.
But he's doing it for personal purposes, not on behalf of the country.
What personal purposes?
He wants to get reelected.
Absolutely.
Obama did the same thing.
No, absolutely. No,
he did not.
Obama did not do the same thing.
You can always try and change the subject and make stuff up. But remember, this whole thing with Biden Ukraine was started on the internet, just like the whole CrowdStrike thing that Trump mentioned started on the internet. It probably started with a Russian bot, and every Republican seems to jump right on it like, oh my God, we got a great issue now.
Oh, wait a minute.
They're all made up, JJ.
They're not made up. Biden's son worked for the company. Biden's son was taking $50 grand a year, working for a company. First of all, he knew nothing about the industry that he was dealing with. Joe Biden takes him there on Air Force Two, has a meeting, tells the president of, or the premier, or whatever it is in Ukraine, the president of Ukraine, that either you fire the investigator who's looking into my son's company within 6 hours, or I suspend $1.8 billion in aid, and the clock's ticking. Guess what? He fired him within 6 hours.
Is that what happened? And how do you explain then
Yes,
the $100 million gift to Ivanka Trump that the Saudis gave her? For what? A charity? Where does that come from?
What about the Chinese giving her all those patents?
The
Chinese gave her all those patents.
In fairness, the Clinton Foundation has taken a lot of money from foreign governments.
Yeah, it would be nothing.
You're the vice president, but the vice president's son, he was the current vice president at the time. You think his son got on the board because he's a nice guy? It might have something to do with because his father is the vice president of the United States.
Yeah.
I don't think that hurts the cause here.
But it doesn't mean that there was any corruption there. There's been no evidence. The prosecutor specifically said Biden is not involved.
May have been investigated.
Did anyone investigate?
They weren't investigating the company. They were investigating the owner of the company.
Stay
Will be now.
Stay right where you are. Much more ahead when Let It Rip continues.
And I had gotten a commitment from Poroshenko and from Yatsenyuk that they would take action against the state prosecutor, and they didn't. So they said they were walking out to press conference. Said, "No," I said, "I'm not going to. We're not going to give you the $1 billion." They said, "You have no authority. You're not the president." The president said, "I said, call him." I said, "I'm telling you, you're not getting the $1 billion." I said, "You're not getting the $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here." And I think it was, 6 hours? I said, "I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money." Oh, son of a got fired. And they put in place someone who was solid.
Now, that's Joe Biden last year telling the Council on Foreign Relations how he got rid of a top Ukrainian prosecutor. There are allegations that the prosecutor was investigating Biden's son, Hunter, at the time. Welcome back to Rip with Tori, Sherry, JJ, and Michael. Let's talk about that because the president said today, look, I have done nothing that Joe Biden hasn't already done, and perhaps he's done worse. Maybe he should be investigated too. What do you think?
There's absolutely no evidence that Joe Biden was working for personal gain or the gain of his son. He was acting on the president's behalf. He said he was doing it. And by the way, when he was doing it, it wasn't just the United States. It was the European Union and Ukraine all wanted to get rid of this prosecutor general because he was corrupt. He was with the Russians through the previous president, and they had to get rid of the guy. And so they needed a way to do so. And Joe Biden stepped up and said, "Sure, I would do it."
Sure, with his son in tow, and by happy coincidence, his son's job on the board of directors was saved at least for a period of time at $50,000 a month.
Imagine.
A happy coincidence for the Biden family.
It had nothing to do with that. That was something that was made up on the internet afterwards, and you jumped all over that, JJ, and I get it. You know, people listen to you when you say that, but it's absolutely not true. Burisma, the name of the company was Burisma. The leader of that company was being investigated because he was involved with another oligarch that skipped the country as soon as the former president left, and you had the new folks in power in 2014. He's like, time to go, and they've got this investigation going into him. It wasn't even into his company.
But you still have Donald Trump also admitting that he withheld the money intended to go to the Ukraine until he got a chance to speak on the phone with a new leader. Now, is Trump playing that same game? I will not give you money unless you do what I tell you to do.
Where did that say that in the memo, in the phone call rehash that was released? Where did it say that? Where did it say anything like that?
It doesn't have to be direct. Oh, we've been treating you very well. We've been treating you better than any other European nation, says Trump on that phone call.
So we're now supposed to be mind readers?
And so
that's the exact language that he used during the campaign. He said that we were giving too much money to foreign companies or to foreign countries.
Right.
Right. And look. Imagine if the Obama administration would have been that in touch with Ukraine to help them keep Crimea against Russia. Look, this is Russia, Ukraine, Russia, Ukraine.
Tori, that's a distraction. The issue right now is what Trump failed to do. I will agree that they should have done more earlier on the Crimea Peninsula, and they didn't. But the point here is that We have Trump admitting he wanted this personal favor, that he wanted for personal gain. Now we need to look for context. That's why you do an impeachment inquiry and find out of the 2 or 3 reasons he said why the money hadn't been paid earlier, which one of those was correct, if any of them.
All of the above.
No, it doesn't work that way. The fact that he had fired the ambassador.
But don't you think, though, that this was a classified conversation? I am unaware that when leaders, heads of state talk to each other, that their phone calls are being recorded, and that at some point in time, their transcripts can be released to the world. I don't know how good that is. So it's strange a little bit that President Trump would release this now. Is he talking to Germany, England, whatever? No. President Trump released this. Why? I think you have to ask yourself
because
that.
Democrats
Because there's enough in there that he can use to say that Biden is being investigated.
Right.
Biden's the bad guy here. That's what the president's going to do. And I would hope that, does this rise to the level of impeachment? Because impeachment at this point is almost an impossibility. I have a better chance of being elected president than Trump getting impeached.
But is it also dangerous? Is it also dangerous for Democrats, though?
You know,
because look, Mueller failed to find any evidence of Russian collusion, and that investigation has gone away. Now you have this doing. If you are again crying wolf, and there is no wolf, does it then mean that you will have trouble in 2020?
First of all, I think that Nancy Pelosi has taken the time to not just jump to the occasion like many other Democrats have called for.
Although she announced the impeachment process before the transcripts were released.
Absolutely now, but also you have the whistleblower that is willing to come forward, and I think that would be more reliable than just a summary. We have a summary of what was said. We don't have the whistleblower's testimony, and so I think when we start, we can bring out the whistleblower, provide the protections that are necessary for the person that came forward, and then we can drill down to the truth and see that this is a mobster story, real life, with Giuliani on taxpayer dollars, whether he's the president's attorney or not. Why was he there? So Trump is continuing to collude and get into the affairs. This should be a national security threat, dealing with Russia, Ukraine, anything necessary to win the election.
We also have word tonight that the actual whistleblower complaint has been delivered to Congress. It's in 2 secured rooms, one in the Senate, one in the House. Members have to go in through lock and key to go in and read this 12-page report, but the full report is not there. We also understand that the Director of National Intelligence is going to testify at some point tomorrow to the House.
Well, there is some good things.
More fake news with that.
But on the whistleblower, though, the idea of a whistleblower is to, number one, protect classified information and protect the security interests of the United States, and at the same time to allow somebody who has been wrong, fired from their job perhaps, to allow him to tell the world about the bad of the government. So you need that balance there. So the fact that it's under lock and key to me is okay. We don't want just people filing lawsuits all over, and so the whole world can read about classified information. So that part is good. The bad part would have been had it not been turned over to Congress, because I understand the law. It's a very tricky, weird kind of law. It's the Congress, certain members of Congress do have to have the ability to read a classified whistleblower case, and that's good. So right now, I think procedurally, it's okay.
We also understand, too, that the people who've read the document, Democrats, of course, say, oh, my God, it's a smoking gun. It's proof of a crime. Republicans say, oh, it's not too bad, nothing there, except for Mitt Romney, who says he's a bit disturbed by what he's seen so far.
Mitt Romney's got less Republican blood in him as Elizabeth Warren has Indian blood in her.
So,
this whole thing, by the way, first of all, these conversations aren't recorded. This one, at least, was not recorded. And secondly, as far as the transcript goes, you know, that's the new Democratic talking point today. As soon as it came out and there was nothing there once again, well, this is only a summary of what actually took place. We'd like to know what really was said in that conversation. Well, according to the CIA, this is as an exact translation or transcript of the conversation as is humanly possible.
That they can recall. So the whistleblower would be the best account of the story.
But he's
let's just not get
donor. He's a Democratic sympathizer.
Let's just get too far ahead of ourselves. Based on what the president said, there should be an impeachment inquiry. Now the House has got to determine if they can draft articles of impeachment. I'm not saying he's ever going to be removed from office. There's only been 13 impeachments in our history. 7 of them were successful by the Senate. 3 involving presidents. None were successful. Exactly. That doesn't mean this isn't a worthwhile process. The Congress is left with nothing else to use against this president when you have this obvious statement of self-interest other than to start articles of impeachment.
But as Charlie mentioned, this is futile. Even if the House charges the president, he will have a roadblock in the Senate. The Republican majority in the Senate will never remove him from office.
But I respectfully disagree it's futile. That process is important. Just as it was with Bill Clinton, just as it was with Richard Nixon, the process is still important. Whether it's having the hearings, it may redound on the Democrats, it may on the Republicans.
But this document
we don't know.
Anybody
At this point, it should go forward so we know what's going on.
Right now, people really want action from Congress. The Democrats took back Congress last year. Democrats expected something. They got 2 years of impeachment. They did not vote for this.
If it's
Alyssa
an authentic inquiry,
called for impeachment yesterday before the document was released. The document is released. There's nothing there. $350,000 was raised against her because of that. Because people in the 8th district don't want impeachment. They want the USMCA.
As it should happen. The process should involve both sides.
Both sides.
All right. You've heard from the panel. Up next is your turn when Charlie takes the show on the road.
Democrats in Congress are going to do an impeachment inquiry on the president. Should they?
Yes.
No.
It's probably important to start the impeachment investigation.
There's only so much you can take, and the man doesn't seem to know right from wrong.
This whole thing has been a witch hunt from the very beginning, going back to 2016.
There was never any quid pro quo. You know, you investigate and I'll give your country money. That doesn't seem to be.
Right. It's all about money. And that drives me nuts.
So why not go after him?
Go after Joe Biden.
Go after Joe Biden, of course.
Not go after President Trump?
Hell no. Why?
Should presidents be talking to other presidents about investigating their political opponents?
No, I don't believe so.
And here they're killing all these people in Yemen. And, I mean, that doesn't mean a thing to him. It's all because we need the money. And that drives me nuts.
The 218 votes, they're never going to get there. And, you know, the Senate isn't going to do anything. So, yeah, he's just going to ride this out.
Time for final thoughts. Sherry, beginning with you.
More than anything, I do agree that a lot of this is a distraction for the issues that are really important to our state, our country. And I really would like to see the testimony of the whistleblower. But I'm hopeful that we can get down to the issues that really matter so we can elect a new president for these United States that don't get involved in national affairs with Ukraine and Russia.
JJ.
You took the words out of my mouth. To some degree, the presidential harassment has got to stop. Let's get something done in Washington, D.C. for the American people. Enough of this attacks on this president. They have failed since the day he announced his run for president, and it's continued every single day. It's time to stop.
The president has relentlessly attacked the Constitution since the day he was in office. It is time for the House and Senate to uphold their oath, which was to the Constitution, not to the president nor to the party. Do your duty.
Tori.
We are sitting in Southfield, Michigan, where the city clerk was just charged with tampering ballots and changing ballots in the last election. Michigan Rising Action is calling for a full audit of every election she's overseen. She's been a clerk for 10 years in different municipalities. In 2010, if you remember, there was Pia Fahrenkopf, who was dead and voted in Pontiac in the 2010 election. This woman was the deputy city clerk, and Michigan Rising Action is calling for the state to investigate and audit every election she's overseen.
Well, let's look through the whole state.
Charlie.
Listen, I don't like what the president did. I think there's a lot in that phone conversation that is disturbing, sending your private attorney for one and talking about kind of a quid pro quo. Listen, but I don't like recalls either. I don't like impeachments. I think the way to win is you do it at the ballot box. The people decided, vote. If the Democrats don't like President Trump, get rid of him on the election. Not now. You can't impeach the guy. It's not possible.
I think people are so desperate for change, they are willing to put a man who was a reality TV star into the highest office in the USA. And did you realize that the president of Ukraine was a comedian who played in a TV show in which he was the president of Ukraine? Now he's the real-life president. I don't know what's coming, whether it's comedy or drama, but I do know that we will be all watching very intently. We thank you for your comments. We thank you for watching this edition.
Organizer in there.
Let it rip.
Remember that.
The Let It Rip discussion continues online. Sound off.